this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Good morning. Welcome in. The big basketball tournament over the next several weeks, powered by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and Lounge. Full bar and food, plus a top 100 golf course, Dancing Rabbit Golf Club, all an hour away from here. That's a good 24, 48 hours. Hit Philip M's, too. Great old-style steakhouse. The Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and Lounge and DancingRabbitGolf.com. Brought to you by the big hoops tournament over the next few weeks. We'll see if Mississippi State can punch their ticket on Friday. No, sorry, Thursday. I'll be there. Heading to Nashville today. And they play tomorrow morning at, lunch, noon. MSU in Florida. They win. I think most people believe they're in. They lose. I don't think so, but maybe they have a shot. This is 105.9 The Zone ESPN. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. You can see that we have a Tito's Vodka helmet on the set and a Mississippi State football helmet signed by Fred Smoot and a super cool Ole Miss bag cooler that we're excited about. We're also excited to welcome in our friend Tom Luginbill, ESPN insider, college football. And really, we can go NFL with Luke's because he follows these guys from high school to college. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. We've been discussing this, what the SEC may do. Are they going to stay at 8 with Oklahoma and Texas coming in next year? 8 conference games. Or are they going to go to 9? Nick Saban kind of threw a fit last week on what is rumored to be, if they go to 9, Alabama's 3 permanent opponents. Nobody feels sorry for Alabama or Nick Saban. It would be Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. They're the number one recruiter. Right. They've been the number one recruiter with Georgia. You know, we'll see. Tom, this debate is going to shake out here over the next 60 to 90 days. There's also some talk that if they do this, they may not play as many Power 5 non-conference games. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have more isolation in college football. And I don't think that's what people want. As somebody who flies all over the country to call games, and at times you get different conference matchups before everybody gets into conference play. Sure. I have been talked into the fact that it is good for the ACC and SEC and Big Ten and Big 12 and Pac-12 to play some football against each other rather than them never playing each other. What do you think, Tom Luginbill?
No, I agree. The problem is the coaches are always going to push back on that if you go to 9 games, and they're going to want to schedule a group of 5 or an FCS opponent early in the season and, of course, late in the season. That's their kind of nature of doing things, because particularly late in the year, and the SEC takes a lot of flack for this, but I don't fault them because I'd do the same thing, or I would want to. You get into the back half of that season, man, it is a battle of attrition. And if you don't have a bye fall in the right place, which most, if all, teams don't have a bye falling in the right place in the last 3 to 4 weeks, they look at that as a bit of a breather if they can schedule, a Western Carolina there, or pick your school, somebody that's
Wofford.
Not going to be Wofford. Somebody that's not going to be overly competitive for you. And now you get to play some of your young guys, rest some of your older guys. Not that you want to call it a bye week, but in essence, that's kind of how they're looking at it. So, yeah, would we have less opportunities to play Power 5 versus Power 5 from other conferences if you go to 9 games? Absolutely. I think the coaches would unanimously band together and say, all right, if we're doing this 9 thing, and I hope this wouldn't happen, but it could, because I think that kickoff weekend where you have the Chick-fil-A kickoff and you have some of these neutral site deals like we've had, in Arlington, and, you get an Alabama versus a Wisconsin, or you get, a Clemson versus, whoever, name your school, that you wouldn't normally see. It would be interested to see if those teams that have been more than willing to do those would now choose to opt out of them, because it's a big game against a big opponent. But if I'm an Alabama, Bo, I would opt to play that game early because you're going to have distinct advantages personnel-wise and take advantage of a team that maybe doesn't know who they are yet.
True. That's a good point. An extra game is tough on some programs that have proven they can be really good at times. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, South Carolina. Sometimes Kentucky, Missouri. And even that second tier of Auburn and Tennessee they're not in A&M, although I may put A&M in the Mississippi State, Ole Miss tier, considering they really haven't won big. We just talk about them because they are so big as far as resources and enrollment and money. But, you've got the elite, Luke's, in Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Okay, those are the three teams in the league.
And Auburn can be.
And, no doubt. And I think Freeze will get them there, okay?
Yeah.
Combination of recruiting and transfers and how good he is with the QB. I think he can make up the gap at times, certain years, on Georgia, Bama, and LSU, especially at home, and beat them and put himself in position for the 12-team playoff. But on some years where you pull 4 at home and 5 on the road on a 9-game schedule, even an Auburn, Tennessee, A&M could find themselves in a bad spot and just trying to fight for a mid-tier bowl game, Tom.
Yeah, you could, and depending on how top to bottom strong the league is, what you brought up there, I kind of go back to some of the comments that Nick Saban said about his potential common 3 every year, and he doesn't like it. Well, if you were to base that opinion off of the last, let's just say, 7 years, then Alabama should be ecstatic about it being Auburn and LSU and Tennessee. But Nick Saban knows what Auburn and Tennessee are capable of being. And up until this past fall, I think over the last 10 years, Tennessee's won like 30% of their games. Like they haven't even been in the mix. So I think what worries Nick Saban is that he's aware of what Tennessee and Auburn are capable of being, and he's looking at it from that perspective, not from the perspective of what they've been the last 5 to 7 years. So now, to your point, if all of a sudden Auburn gets really good, Tennessee gets really good, Alabama we're going to assume is going to stay at or near the top. You've got Georgia. We don't know what's going to happen with Florida, ascending. Somebody's got to lose, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. No matter how good everybody gets, somebody is going to lose. And then you find yourself in a position where you could be a really good football team and maybe be a better football team than the top 2 to 3 teams in another Power 5 conference, but it won't matter.
Well, and here's where I am now with it. Tom Luginbill, ESPN insider on the Out of Bounds show. Blake was getting on me during the break because, when Sankey and them did the Power 5 non-conference mandate, I was like, what are we doing here? I'd rather stay at 8 and keep the Power 5, non-con and play ACC and Big 12 and Pac-12 and Big 10 teams.
But there's no guarantee that's going to happen, Bo. That's the thing. There's no guarantee you're going to get that.
And I like the one permanent and rotating 7, and you miss Alabama and LSU every year. You get them every other year if you're State and Ole Miss and Arkansas and so on. I just think that's a better spot. And then you get to play around the country and they come see you. I think that's better and healthier for college football than the latter of what we're talking about if we go to a 9-game conference schedule and they don't ask you to do the Power 5 non-con, which means ADs will not do it, Luke. Now, Alabama may do it because they can. Georgia may do it. But I can tell you this. I've talked to Mississippi State, Ole Miss, if they have any kind of good ADs. Arkansas, South Carolina, Kentucky, no way I would. Now, I know that they're tied in. And look, I think if you go to 9 games, I wonder if you keep Clemson, South Carolina, and Florida State. I wouldn't if I was Scott Strickland. I'd be like, we're out. We got to find a way to win enough games. I would, Luke. It's about winning games. It is.
That's how this conversation started. Is you're going to lose those Power 5 matchups because the schools that think they're going to be at a distinct disadvantage within their own conference aren't going to be willing to make it harder on themselves out of conference.
So, well, and Blake just mentioned we may be moving towards a Power 4. And again, I don't know what that looks like. But it's a matter of how much ESPN Disney throws at the SEC. And also, will the SEC cannibalize themselves and take slots away from themselves in this new expanded 12-team playoff? See, if I'm Sankey, I'm sitting here thinking we're already winning titles. Some years we're sending 2 to the 14 playoff. Hell, if we stay at 8, I may could gobble up another 2 spots out of those 12 spots, and we'll all be riding high. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that line of thinking. But they also may think they're good enough anyway. Even if you go to 9, you're still going to get at least half the slots, right? I mean, you really are. I mean, if you think about it, and then you'll feel good, maybe even 6 to 8 of the slots, and you'll feel good about who you're getting matched up against because you're going to probably have the better football team. So what you could end up having is almost an entirely SEC remaining pool potentially. So let's just say if Tennessee had another really, really good year, they finish 10-2. They don't play in the SEC championship game, but they become the 7th seed in the college football playoff. All right, and then you look at who they may play. Well, what if it's Baylor out of the Big 12? Well, who's the better team between those two? Right? I mean, I'm just hypothesizing here. But
sure, Tennessee is.
I think, yeah. So I think they're also looking at it through the lens of who would I don't want to call lower tier, but who would our back-end teams that would make the college football playoff, if we're the SEC, who would they be playing in that first round? And they would probably feel like they've got advantages regardless of who that opponent is.
I agree. The overwhelming majority of the time. Okay.
Hell, it could be a group of 5 team. I mean, it could be on any given year, if that's the 12th or 11th team, now you got real advantages.
You do, although I really wonder how that's going to work going forward now that Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston will be heading to the Big 12. There's just only so many heavily populated areas that could really have the juice at the G5 level, Lugs.
Right.
And we're shifting those guys into Power 5, and there's I don't know how many more Central Florida. This year always down in Orlando, great area. Yeah. You can find dudes. Cincinnati, you can find dudes in Houston.
Dude, Houston's the biggest gold mine. They don't even have to get on a plane to recruit.
No, and
not a single coach on that staff has to get on an airplane to recruit.
I just wonder how many more teams there are like that, around the country that can be what. Develop into build what they did, and then find themselves in a Power 5 comp. For our listeners, those teams are going to the Big 12. Just in case you forgot. Now,
yeah, and you know what? A team like App State would be in that conversation. A team like Boise would be in that conversation. The problem is, to your point, they're not in a heavily populated area, which makes what they've done even more impressive.
It is. I don't think they can do what what we just referenced can do, but you're right. They're really good programs.
UTSA is the one team, because they are going to have distinct advantages because of where they reside.
True. Yeah, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, all that. All right, let's switch gears. You have covered Lamar Jackson since he was in high school, and he goes on to U of L, and then of course he's had a good NFL career. And it looks like the NFL owners are not going to do what Jimmy Haslam did with the Cleveland Browns and guarantee all that money to Deshaun Watson, and they're just like, no. And that's the contract he wants.
Right.
Now, talk about him as far as skills. He's had an MVP year. He's also had some ups and downs. I think he's still trying to develop in the pocket a little bit more, probably. Refine his skills from the pocket. He's obviously can hurt you with his feet and legs. When you look at him and his progressions from high school to college to the NFL, what do you see with Lamar Jackson? And some team's going to spend $200 million. They're not going to guarantee the Deshaun deal, but somebody's going to. Yeah, no.
I mean, and that's not a knock against Lamar Jackson. That's an indictment on the Cleveland Browns in a collision sport where there's a high rate of injury to the most important position on the field, and you're going to guarantee that type of money. That's not a good business deal. That's bad business.
Agree.
Right? And it's not a knock on Lamar. But to answer your question, I don't think Lamar would be where he is today without Bobby Petrino. And I say that, and I just so happen to have 2 Louisville games the year he won the Heisman, and I had the Louisville spring game going into that season. And one of the things that Bobby Petrino did during the 15 days of spring football that year is he did not allow Lamar Jackson to play out of the shotgun. Everything they did in every offensive snap was under center, within the pocket, 3-step, 5-step, forced him to stay with progressions. Even when he didn't like it, when his instincts told him he could take off and run, he coached him hard and tried to create some discipline because he could see that he had the skill as a passer, but his natural instinct, he's so athletic that when things aren't quite right, he's going to take off and run, right? And I think that he made such strides with Lamar Jackson and improved him so much as an in-pocket guy that he added to the arsenal. He added something that maybe Lamar didn't have coming out of high school, his redshirt freshman year, and that had to be honed and developed. And credit Lamar, who, was all in on buying in, and I think is a better player as a result of it. I look at it this way. The way he plays, I'm not saying it's dangerous or reckless, but I'm saying in that league there is risk, and that scares people, all right? And I think that's fair. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that Daniel Jones is getting $40 million and Lamar Jackson is getting 32, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And so I think you got to pay him. I think you got to pay him above market value. I don't think there's ever going to be guarantees for anybody. It doesn't matter who it is anymore. It's because it's bad business. And those who continue to, I think, live in that world and make bad business decisions are going to be out of a job at some point or another. And so that's my take on him.
Okay. So we'll see what the Ravens do. He's not going to get the Deshaun. The other 31 owners have decided they're not going down that road again. And so, and he's representing himself, Tom Luginbill. How about that?
Yeah, I don't think that's overly smart. That's just my personal opinion.
Sure.
When you're dealing with in this magnitude of not just dollars, but relationships, conversations, tough conversations sometimes, you know what? You need a bad guy. You can't be the bad guy, and I would say that in my line of work, in your line of work, if, like I have to have relationships and answer to and interact with my bosses that ultimately at the end of the day are also making contract decisions on me.
Right.
Right. And if things go sour, if things get heated, you don't want to fracture a relationship that could lead somebody to make an opinion or a decision that wasn't objective. And I think that's why you need the go-between guy. Right.
Okay. Let's go to Aaron Rodgers. This is weird. He's weird, but he's so talented. When was the first time you saw or met Aaron Rodgers?
Well, it's interesting because I haven't met him, but I've seen him play as a junior college guy. It's a little history here. When I was getting recruited out of junior college, and Jeff Tedford loves junior college guys, and he was the offensive coordinator at Fresno State in those early 90s teams with Trent Dilfer, those really, really good teams in the WAC. And he had recruited me really, really hard. I maintained a long-standing relationship with him. And then, he went on to be the offensive coordinator, of course, at Oregon, and the offensive coordinator, of course, at Cal and Fresno again, and then back to become the head coach at Cal. And along the way, guys like myself, Akili Smith was a JUCO guy that he took.
Wow.
And then there was this guy out of Butte College who was Aaron Rodgers, and it's interesting. If you go back and look at Aaron Rodgers, even if you look at still shots of him at Cal, look at where he carries the ball and how he holds the ball, and then watch him now. And look at how different he is mechanically and his ability to change arm angles, flick of the wrist. Those were things that he couldn't do out of junior college, and I don't think he was really even doing them out of Cal. It was just something that he kind of, I think, developed over the years, and it's a totally different look and style of play from a release standpoint that he's kind of developed over the years.
Ah, okay. So Mahomes may have taken what he did and taken it to another level. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. Most people that talented don't sit like he did. And, whether he ends up with the Jets or somebody else, you get the sense he's hard to deal with, but who knows what's true and not true, right? I mean, I think the Packers not having an owner, it hurts them. Luke's?
I think so. Not having that big boss that can get involved and that can say, hey, this is what we're doing or what we're not doing. And you may be right. It's just different, and that's why, that used to be the criticism of the Cincinnati Bengals. They didn't have a player personnel department. Like, they didn't have scouts. All the coaches did everything. And for the most part, that's still fairly true. And there was a lot of criticism. It's okay. Well, why aren't they as good as they should be?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Years and years and years.
No wonder they weren't any good.
Yeah. Right.
Well, now they got a dude at quarterback and some other good things, and a good coach and so on. All right, well, we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I like your take on Lamar Jackson. You need to have a go-between. You need to have an agent to help you negotiate and be the bad guy and so on. All right, bud, have a good week, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to text you and Blake right now 2 still shots of Aaron Rodgers at Cal and at Green Bay if you want to use for your social and stuff like that with the conversation we just had.
Okay. Yeah, I tell you what, man, Tedford, underrated. I mean, he did an amazing job at Fresno and Cal.
Oh, my goodness.
Golly, he had that thing.
And everybody used to give him a hard time saying, well, none of your quarterbacks pan out. Well, his job isn't to coach them in the NFL. His job is to win games in college.
Hey, and look, when Pete Carroll was on his run at Southern Cal, the second best team in the Pac-10 at that time, now Pac-12, was Cal in 02, 03, 04. During that time he had Aaron and Marshawn Lynch and some other dudes. All right, buddy, have a great weekend. Appreciate you.
All right. I just texted those pictures. You're going to giggle.
Tom Luginbill, ESPN National College Football Analyst, also doing the XFL. He joined us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. He believes without a doubt that Lamar Jackson, and Blake was over there shaking his head, yes, that Lamar needs an agent to negotiate with whoever all these teams are, Blake. Obviously the Ravens, but the Falcons, among others, that could be in line for his services. And we'll see what shakes out with the former MVP. He hasn't really done anything in the postseason, but he's electric. He's a big-time playmaker. Kids love him because on video games he's, amazing. So he's got that whole social media thing going because of his explosive plays. I think that gives him a little more juice than what he is. He's a good player, but I do think that gives him a little more juice because his clips, his 10-second clips on Twitter and all that are pretty damn amazing. Hey, don't forget that Mudbugs opens today. You want some crawfish or shrimp? Mudbugs, 2 locations in Rankin County, Reservoir and downtown Brandon. Mudbugs, best crawfish in Mississippi.